We can't see your smiling face. Mark does like to have you on camera if that's a possibility. So nice to have you. Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting parents whose children have passed. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. HPH goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. HPH affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at this meeting is voluntary. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Discussions here are confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members, so we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you. Mark?
Thank you, Lynn. Honored to be here. Can everyone hear me okay? I think a recent meeting, some people said they couldn't. Okay. Well, kudos for being here. This is one of the most powerful audio programs and tools I can share with you. So I'm really excited to do this. There's so many levels to it. So it's called Holistic Breathing Technique. I actually designed this version of it. Suzanne Giesman and I did a 4-day workshop, and I was using an old one that somebody put together, but she encouraged me to create my own, and I thank her for that. And it's good. It's really good. So let me dive in. There's a lot to share about it. We won't be able to do an actual session because the session takes 45 minutes. In other words, for some of the sessions, I can do like a 20, 25-minute and give you an idea about it, but that won't work with this. But that's okay because there's a lot. The technique is actually simple, but there's a lot to know behind it. And so let me explain. I've taught this to thousands and thousands of people over the last almost 30 years, and some of the stories afterwards are just amazing. So I highly, highly recommend it after you understand this information and use it the right way. So I need to share a disclaimer, and that is you should check with your doctor first if you have and therapist if you have significant mental imbalance, and definitely with your doctor if you have cancer of the lymphatic system, because this technique really increases lymphatic flow. And so conceivably, if you had lymphatic cancer, it could cause it to spread, although I think the benefits by far outweigh the downsides. And of course, a disclaimer, this technique and none of mine are designed to replace traditional medical or psychotherapeutic care. So this is 30 minutes of deep, noisy, open mouth, diaphragmatic breathing. So let me break that down. That's a lot. Deep, so you're taking a deep breath in through your open mouth, and it's noisy. You want to make a sound breathing in and out. So it looks and sounds something like, and it takes a little while to get that down as to what to do with your vocal cords. But with practice, it's easy. The other thing is you want to use diaphragmatic breathing. And by the way, I share all this information in article number 70 at soulproof.com/articles. And then also in the introductory track, when you download the free Holistic Breathing Technique audio program at soulproof.com/shop, there are two tracks, and the first one's an introduction. It takes about 15 minutes to explain all this, and then once you've heard it a couple of times, you don't need to do it anymore. And then the technique itself. So like I said, it starts off with 30 minutes of this deep, noisy, open mouth, diaphragmatic breathing. So here's what I mean by diaphragmatic. When you breathe in, your abdominal muscles should bulge out. And so go ahead and practice this, please. And this is the same kind of diaphragmatic breathing we do in all the other techniques, only this one's more, forceful. This isn't a meditation. So put one hand on your abdominal muscles, and when you breathe in, your abdomen should protrude out a bit. So breathe in, and then when you exhale, breathe out, your abdomen should pull in. Diaphragmatic breathing is named that because you have a diaphragm, a muscle which goes side to side and front to back all the way across your body underneath your lungs. And when your diaphragm is able to excurd down some, that's when your lungs can inflate deeply. And then when you exhale, your stomach muscles come up, the diaphragm moves up. So it's the best way to breathe in general, but especially during a technique like this. This is what opera singers and so on, they use diaphragmatic breathing. So it's really important to know. Now, in the background of this, and this is another reason we can't really do this in a session, a Zoom session. I mean, we could if we had enough time. There's background music. Excuse me, I'll get through this in a moment. There's all kind of different background music. So in the beginning, da, 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 just kind of peaceful, like you're walking through the park, and then 10 minutes in, like you're racing through the jungle with tigers chasing you and conga and drums going on. And then eventually it gets soft and peaceful again, and then you go into a 15-minute meditation with these words that remind you how life is really set up. I mean, I cried my heart out of so many times. Now I can listen to it without crying, but the first words you hear after 30 minutes of this deep breathing are, I remember now. Yep, I'm getting to it. I came here born on the wings of angels. And it's like, oh my God, yeah, I remember. How could I have forgotten something that important? And so did your kids. And it's just such a powerful way. I'll talk about all the different benefits. So throw that all together, deep, noisy, open mouth, diaphragmatic breathing with background music, and then coaching. So I'm yelling out things. Let it go, let it out. You don't have to hold it in. You're safe in your body. God is walking with you, just all kinds of things. And that combination then is just so magically powerful. So let me share some details. First of all, there's just two things that can go wrong, and that is if a person breathes too deeply and too quickly, they can get a little lightheaded. The other thing that can happen is their hands can cramp up. It's called contractures. And that's just because you're getting so much oxygen and you're blowing off so much carbon dioxide that your O2 and CO2 levels get thrown off a bit. So again, if you feel like your hands are cramping up or you feel a little dizzy or lightheaded, just simply slow down the rate, slow down the depth. It may take a while to build up and kind of get in shape for this, but it's so well worth it. And then in general, if you feel uncomfortable in any way during the technique, just breathe slowly and relax. Lynn was just telling me about a friend that did a really intense breath work session, and it was too much for her. So, let your soul be your pilot, as the old song by Sting goes, and just listen to yourself. If you feel uncomfortable, then just stop doing the and then just breathe slowly, relax, and listen to it. And then maybe later you can do some deep breathing. Ease into it. More is not always better. Now, if you're not familiar with it, breath work has been used across time and cultures. First of all, to expand consciousness. It's a way to achieve an altered state of consciousness. It assists healing. The Aramaic word, which was the language commonly spoken at the time where Christianity, Judaism, and Islam were birthed in that region, Aramaic, they had a word ruach, which meant, and I probably should roll that a lot more and sound like I'm coughing something up, but I can't do it. But ruach meant breath and spirit simultaneously. So there's people early on recognized there's a big connection between your breath, especially how you breathe, and your spirit. Yeah, that was one of the words, that was one of the meanings of the words soul and spirit in the beginning. They thought God was breathing life into you, and then when you change worlds, your last breath, and that's it, the breath is taken back into the divine. It's actually a pretty good description. Also, the words chi, ki, and prana, which are words used in China, Japan, and India, respectively, all meant breath, spirit, and life force. So these are all very much tied in. And what happens when someone goes through a really tough challenge, which you all have, then you can tend to slump over a bit and breathe more shallowly. When you slump over some, then your diaphragm gets jammed up against your abdominal contents and your lungs can't inflate slowly. So you actually can create depression. Let's say you're feeling great now. You can make yourself feel depressed by simply slumping over a bit and breathing shallowly for a while. Conversely, if you're feeling bad and depressed, you can feel better by standing up straight and taking slow, deep breaths. So very, very important. So let me break down the benefits some more because they're body, mind, spirit. And that's why I call it holistic breathing technique. And I won't get into all the physical ones, but there's a long list of physical benefits, which, is a big part of getting well and healing and letting go of what happens. So I guess I will mention a few of them. So what happens is, and there were some pioneers in psychology, Fritz Perls, for example, B.F. Skinner, founder of behaviorism, who recognized that when we go through really big shock, anger, sadness, pain, those emotions can get stuck in our muscles. That's one of the reasons why it's so important to get deep tissue massage. I mean, it feels good to have just the, caress and rub the oil on, but it's really much more benefit to get a deep tissue myofascial release trigger point massage. And some people will have spontaneous releases on the table. They'll start crying or they'll remember things and so on. So that's one of the many physical benefits of this holistic breathing technique. And then over time, some people are so tightened up, they're not even aware of it. They think that's normal. That's one of the reasons when I do the induction process for the different guided meditations, I'll say tense and then relax major muscle groups. So this helps promote awareness of, gosh, I am holding tension here. I am holding my muscles tight. Because as long as you're doing that, it's very difficult to awaken to the big picture of life, to know and show how life is really set up. So mind benefits, first of all, a greater awareness of what's bothering you so you can take actions. I remember one session I did, I was just a couple years in doing this. um, and so I was on the road. I was going from Unity Church to Unity Church on the East Coast doing seminars as I did for years. And so I just checked the news. I was in the stock market then, checking the Dow and all that. And the news was finishing up. And they're like, uh, A young man, Matthew Shepard, a gay man, was beat to death by three three men in Colorado, I think were the details. And I was just like, oh God, another mindless killing. That's just how my brain categorized it. I just pigeonholed it. I was getting ready to start my day. Um, and then when I was doing the breathing a little later, it hit me. And I could feel, oh my God, what, you know, how horrible. I mean, first of all, to get beaten to death over because of your sexual orientation, what was that like for Matthew? What was that like for his family and friends? And what kind of ignorant hell must these perpetrators be in that they could even consider doing something like that, let alone carry it out? And it just shocked me. And I just said, oh my God, it's so tough to be on Earth. And it was just like visceral cathartic release. So that's, again, one of the benefits. But, the brain has a way of processing things. Well, that happens, oh, those stupid people, they shouldn't have done that. But that's not getting in touch with the emotions. And if you're really new and raw to the healing journey, by the way, you don't have probably the cognitive space or the heart space to feel it. But when you can, it's good to be more in touch with really how big those things are, not so that are destroyed by it, but so that you're aware of the needs, and then you can take loving action to do something about it, brighten the corner where you are. One of my teachers, Ram Dass, said that it's a fine line. And he said it's kind of like if somebody's walking along and they slip on a banana peel and fall. On one hand, it's funny as hell. On the other hand, your heart says, oh, I'm so sorry, how can I help? And that's kind of the balance that humans do best to take. On one hand, know that this is all an illusion. This is a blink of an eye. It's all good. It's all God. And on the other hand, taking it seriously and know what causes you pain and what causes others pain and do what you can about it. All right, so other mental benefits, it helps release stuck emotions. Kind of talked about that, how we hold them in. Most people, when they start doing this technique, cry their heart out. I, um, I was going through a divorce, 2000, huge financial loss. There's like four big things going on at once. And when I started using this, I was crying so much there was snot running down my face, which reminded me of a famous rock and roll song. And if anybody can name that band and or song later, I'll be impressed. Snot running down my face. Anyway, it's a great way to release stuck emotions and just get out. So you may cry, you may pound the mattress. It's good to lay on a bed to do this, or at least a padded floor, so you're comfortable, but just pound. Some people like pound on their chest. I mean, these are all ways of getting it out. Primal release techniques.
I have
Interestingly,
a question, Dr. Pitstick. Uh,
yeah, okay, we'll go ahead with that since
uh,
it came up.
just a quick question. I started laughing. Is that normal?
Well,
Laughing.
wow.
I was crying a little bit. Um, I wish it had been more, but just a little. But
Yeah,
then it would alternate with laughing.
that
Have you
is
heard of that?
that is exactly the next thing I was getting ready to say. So impressed. Yeah, some people will laugh. They'll laugh their heads off. And part of this is because they're seeing more of the nature of reality. They're they're seeing really how needless all of our fears are because of everything I talk about in these techniques. We're all part of God. No one really dies. Our time here is a blink of an eye in a span of eternity. We see our loved ones again. We probably planned a lot of what happened. And so, yeah, when you can glimpse a little more of that instead of that pinhole, It is incredibly funny, and some people will laugh. Now, some people will laugh early on, or other people will go through a period where they cry a lot, but then their sadness and pain and all that shifts to that laughing release. So thank you for that. Also, other benefits, it's a very creative time. I always keep a 8.5 by 11 notepad and a pen beside me, and I will be doing the breathing, and I'll be writing out notes. Sometimes I have 5 or 6 pages of notes. Some of the articles I wrote, the ideas came during the breathwork session. Some of the books I wrote, you think of somebody you haven't thought of for years, and you get in contact with them. It's just such a super creative time. So it's another benefit. And then another one I mentioned, although there's many more, is it assists the grieving process. I did it was in a Unity church, I think in Virginia, and this mom just cried and cried and cried and got done, and she said, my daughter passed on 2 years ago. And she said, I thought it was horrible and awful, and because I thought, I was in charge of her and it was my job to take care of her. And she said, during the breath work, I realized she was my teacher. And she felt like I had learned enough lessons that she, a more evolved soul, could move on. Well, and the thing is, she knew it within. I mean, it wasn't just like she read that on a piece of paper. She had experienced it. She knew it at primal level. So next benefit, spiritual. You remember who you really are, why you're here, who walks beside you always, and all the other things I just mentioned. You remember your kids are most likely advanced souls, and that there were good reasons why they passed, when and how they did. And so you have a much greater insight of all that. People will have spontaneous afterlife contacts. I mentioned the first time this happened, this woman, she was really doing, she was really doing it well. But after about 20 minutes in, she curled into a fetal position and she just didn't move a muscle, make a noise. And I actually walked over, I had about 50 people in the room. I walked over and looked to make sure she's breathing because she was so still, but she was. And afterwards I said, I would be very interested to hear what you experienced, because obviously it was something very deep. She said, I went to a place where I was with all my loved ones, people and pets who had passed on. My mom, my dad, my husband, my sister, our pets, and so on. She said, I'm not saying I can imagine them. I'm not saying I can see them. I was there with them. And you couldn't tell her otherwise. I'm sure she was. So like she met them halfway, or she met them on that spiritual dimension, free of the earthly bounds, free of the earthly ignorant beliefs, misinformation and fear. Some people have spontaneous past life memories. And the most incredible one was that one guy, this is hilarious, one guy afterwards, he said, my experience was a past life when I lived in Ireland. Funny thing was, when he was telling this, he spoke with a thick Irish accent, and he didn't have it beforehand. I mean, people he went to church with, like, dude, we never heard you, talk like this. He said, I'm not going to try to do an Irish accent. He was like, I'm not doing this on purpose. It's just what's coming out. And then after an hour or so, it went away. And I was like, oh my God, as a clinical psychologist, this is fascinating to see this. The last thing I will say as far as a benefit is it assists the congruency of your brain-based consciousness and transcendent source of consciousness. So that's a big sentence. What the hell am I talking about? Brain-based consciousness is the awareness, the beliefs that come from your brain, things you've experienced in this lifetime, what you were taught, what your biochemical soup produces, and that could be more depressive thoughts or more elated ones, depending on how you take care of yourself. So that's called the BBC, or brain-based consciousness. But you also have another source of consciousness, which is a transcendent source of consciousness. Your soul, your higher awareness, your real self, different ways to put it. Well, usually the brain-based consciousness is a lower frequency and slower amplitude and more frantic, if you look at it on a graph, whereas your higher consciousness is more flowing but higher amplitude. It's powerful, but it's calm. And so it's very good to quiet the brain, and that's the reason for centering practices, as discussed in article number 77. And this holistic breathing does that. It helps get your brain and your soul on the same wavelength, on the same page. So they're communicating, so they're congruent. And then that's when life becomes an exciting adventure, no matter what's going on with you. Instead of those being like two very disparate voices in your head. So you get the idea, a lot of benefits. The next thing I will say about this is that when babies are born, if you watch the baby breathe, it's what they call belly breathing. So that's that diaphragmatic breathing I mentioned. The bellies rise, fall, rise, fall. Very natural, uninterrupted, smooth breathing. They're blissful and they're aware unless they need something. If they're hungry or need change or something scares them. And so there's good clinical evidence that to varying degrees, children remember the big picture of life until around age 4 or 5, when they get sufficiently indoctrinated into earth school that they forget the big picture of life. So babies come in remembering, as I call it, Buddha baby. My God, Elizabeth sends me photos of her grandson, and I'm sure Lynn's seen him. He's one of the happiest looking fellows I've ever seen, partly because babies still remember. They just came from the light. They just came from home with a capital H. And they still remember that it's all good, it's all God, it's all love, it's all light. And that doesn't go immediately when they come to Earth. It can pretty quickly, if they're not taken care of, they're abused and all that. But for a lot, that continues on. But then, oh, and by the way, and I thought this is fascinating, some cultures, and I think it was mainly in Indonesia, Far East, they're aware of what I just said, and so they won't let their baby's feet touch the ground for like 9 or 12 months after birth, because they don't want to expose the little one to the density of earth too quickly. I'm like, oh my God, these are heathen savages, right? How advanced is that they know that and do something about it? So for many children, then they're exposed to good old planet Earth. For me, my mom couldn't breastfeed, so I was fed formula, which was, I don't even know what it was back then. But they said, you cried most of your 2 years of life and you had colic. And I'm like, yeah, that's because you're feeding me total crap. My intestines weren't designed for that. And that's why it's so important to breastfeed. And then both my parents were heavy smokers. So here I am, I got colic, I'm trying to breathe, I'm choking out. And I'm like, oh boy, sure glad I came here. We're off to a good start. So that's the kind of thing then that can interrupt that steady breathing, that rhythmic breathing. Same way with pain. If you touch, say, a hot stove, you touch it, what do? You take a deep breath, you stop your breath, because children learn very quickly that they can block pain, whether it's emotional, mental, physical, by halting their breath. Remember, breath is the bridge to spirit, to awareness, to consciousness. And so Carolyn Mace talked about this. She said that our energy is like a series of circuit breakers. And so when you are abused or hurt in different ways, you effectively turn off those circuit breakers partly by halting your breath. Well, in the moment, that might be adaptive, but then over time, a person has all these circuit breakers shut off, energy blocked, and then they're trying to do the Earth experience, you know, with only say 50% of their energy. And so that's one of the main benefits of this holistic breathing technique is to release that abuse, release those blocks, and then breathe with your whole being. Okay, I know I'm covering a lot of stuff here and quickly. I wonder if there's any other questions at this point. Nilu, yes. Get to see your
Hi,
latest
Dr. Mark.
background. Hello.
Um, I normally listen to you with such enchantment is the word I would use, but that I forget to write down what I need to. And today, if you don't mind, after this holistic breathing technique, you had also mentioned an article and a video to connect with our spirit guides or to connect with our loved ones, I mean, my children on the other side. If you could give me those article numbers or the
Of course.
video numbers again, please.
Of course,
So I'll
but
write it down.
only if you keep coming up with such beautiful backgrounds. Wow.
Okay,
Okay,
that's a done deal.
so for the holistic breathing, it's article number 70, and
Yes.
then the audio program is called Holistic Breathing. And we
Okay.
talked about this is one way then to visit with your kids, to become aware that they're right there beside you and know
Okay.
that. But then there's also another way to do that, which is my afterlife contact technique.
Okay.
Also an audio program described in articles number 9 and 28. So those are two of the most powerful ways to get in touch with your kids, expand your perceptions, and realize they're right here. I mean, there's nowhere to go. You know, it's all here and now.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Okay. And what about the spirit guides connection? I think you mentioned it once.
Yes, that's, I'll have to look up the article number on this. And that's called Ask Your Soul, Angels, and the Light. And
Okay.
the article for that is number 71.
Okay.
And the audio program is under shop. So
Okay.
that's another wonderful technique to get in. So those are all, you know, fairly close, all so powerful. And I share those. And I know everyone's busy and you're like, wow, that's a lot of stuff, Mark. Well, just do one a week for a while.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
after a while, you won't need them hardly at all, or just once in a while. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear one. Always a
Thank you.
pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I continue? Okay. And so next I will say, so now we talked about why you forget that heaven is here and now. In other words, heaven is not a big place in the sky, you understand. Heaven is a state of mind, a state of consciousness. And that's, again, what the original Aramaic indicated many years ago. Not a place way up in the sky, but a degree of understanding, a degree of realization, your consciousness, your level, where you realize no matter where you are, you're home with a capital H. So holistic breathing is such a powerful way to get back to that point. It helps release the negative factors I mentioned earlier. It begins restoring holistic well-being, body, mind, and spirit, so that you can regain a heaven on earth. And you're like, Mark, you know, we had children pass. Are you crazy? Nope, it's possible, isn't it, Lynn? I mean, Lynn knows more people than I do. And Lynn, can you say a few words about how it's possible to experience heaven on earth even after a child passes?
Well, first of all, I want to say it doesn't happen right away. So you do need to go do the work to get to that point, but it is definitely possible to find joy again. And we live our life like our son is with us every day. We give him credit for things that happen in our life. We blame him for things that happen with our life. But, you know, just do the work and find your people. We're your people, and it's possible. Our kids want us to be happy. They don't want us to sit around and mope and be sad for them all the time. They want us to live for them, live for us, and find joy. So,
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's not just one or two people. I mean, we have almost 200 between the affiliate leaders and between the caring listeners who are demonstrating this. Now, that doesn't mean their life's perfect. My life's not perfect, but it means most of the time they're enjoying high levels of peace, joy, love, gratitude, um, knowing their kids are alive and well. And this holistic breathing technique is, again, a supersonic tool to help you get to that point if you're not already. So next, some technique information. Again, I want to demonstrate because you're going to be doing this on your own and at home, and I want to make sure you're comfortable doing it. So in fact, we're going to have now the audience participation part of the program. I'm going to take out my throat lozenge so I don't inhale it. So do with me, please. So we're going, oh, oh, oh. So remember, let your abdomen bulge out. It's deep breathing. You're moving large amounts of air. Nobody can hear you. Your mics are blocked. So, and there's a certain way you put your tongue and shape your vocal cords to make that noise. But that noise is a really important part of that. So, by the way, there have been more funny things happen over the years. Like one time we were at I was teaching this to a group, about 70 people in a penthouse in a 12-story condo on the beach. And so there's 70 of us in there. Oh, you can imagine. And we came out and people are looking at us like, what in the heck have you people been doing in there? So it's hilarious. So how many people noticed they had trouble making a noise, coming in or out? Raise your hand and then describe for me, please, what you felt. Annette, let's start with you if you're willing, please. Okay, Regina, you raised your hand.
Hello.
Sure.
Okay, I had sent you an email about how it's really triggering for me. That sound reminds me of my daughter being on
Right.
a ventilator. So I tried to do it without making the noise so loud.
Here, are you familiar with reframing? In other words, you look at something a certain way, but then you can reframe it. You can look at it another way. So the background is Gina emailed me and said it was difficult for her to do the holistic breathing because shortly before her daughter's passing, she was making some moaning noises and gurgling noises, and it took Gina back to that moment. And I understand, it's awful to see your child pass and those noises, and you feel so helpless and hopeless. But here's the reframe, Gina. Look at me. She was going to heaven then. That was just her body making those noises. Her real self, her soul, her consciousness was already in the next realm and at peace and in ecstasy. So you can look at it as, oh, that's horrible and I'll never, or you can say, that's how she got free. That's how she escaped this earthly prison. We've talked in other meetings. Dr. Brian Weiss, founder of Past Life Regressions, said that of all the places he's aware of from his work, Earth is the toilet bowl of the universe. Yeah, I know. So your daughter, remind me her name again?
Caitlin,
Yeah, so she
she
flushed
was on a ventilator for about a week, so that was tough. And
yeah.
then the breathing after they took her off the ventilator, that was a different sound. But
Yeah, so she flushed the toilet, right? She's in the toilet bowl of the universe. What do? You flush the toilet and you move on
and
somewhere
you know, that
nicer.
was the first thing I said after she passed was she's free.
Yeah, exactly. So I will point out to you, my friend, that when you laughed twice, you covered your mouth. Like, oh, nope, I can't be laughing. I'm a grieving mom. Oh, I can't have any laughter here. And she's saying to you, come on, mom, laugh. It's hilarious because she's alive and well, probably right beside you. You all planned this. You're stuck in the illusion right now. She's not. So please let yourself laugh. A lot of parents, and Lynn, I'm going to ask you to talk about this a little bit, but one of the most common lower energy emotion parents struggle with is guilt. I should have seen it coming. I should have done something. I should have been there. And what? When you're in guilt, then it's hard to feel good. And then they feel guilty about when they get a little happy. Lynn, jump in, please.
Well, I think as parents, when our child transitions before us, we all feel a little guilt. I mean, that's just not the way that life is supposed to be. But I mean, we have to release that guilt. It was their time. They're our teachers now. We're learning from them. And guilt really doesn't do us any good. It's not a good vibration. We need to release it. But I'm sure that we've all had it at one point or another.
Yeah. Thank you, dear. So, Gina, going back to the breath work, then when you make that shift, you can realize, okay, darling, I'm breathing and moaning and making sounds too. You might even gurgle a little. And while you're not going to heaven right now, or while you're not going to the afterlife, you're going to heaven because you're awakening and you're seeing more of the big picture of life. And that is going to get you so much closer to your daughter, and you'll sense her more and get signs. Okay, let's hear from somebody else who had trouble with the making the noise, because this is so important. It'll take you where you want to go. Okay, and I am wrapping up the, so for those of you, and let's just see your hands, how many of you meditate, about a mantra and repeating the sound, okay, mentally? Well, there's a very similar thing with this breathing and this holistic breathing technique. In other words, with meditation, whenever you realize you're not thinking your mantra, you don't chastise yourself, you don't get angry, you just pick it up. I just use the good old basic Om. Well, similarly with the breath work, whenever you realize you're not breathing, then just go back to it, because some people, they will travel, they'll go into a zone. I mentioned some of them. The woman who's she's visiting, she's with her loved ones who have passed. But again, the trick is, the rule is breathe. Oh, and whenever you realize you're not breathing, just come back to it. It's as simple as that. That's all you have to do to get all these benefits. So I want to stress that again. The music, as I mentioned, changes periodically. I think go ahead, Lynn, yeah?
So could Gina and others who have problems with it, could they replace the sound with Om? Would that be a more positive sound?
Nope, because this isn't a meditation. This isn't peaceful.
Can't replace it. Okay.
This is release. This is catharsis. But it's a good idea. I like the way your brain jumped on that. I know. Yeah. Now, use Om for meditation, but this is breath work and something different. Good question. So I mentioned this music changing periodically. In my sense, after using this many, many times myself, hundreds, and leading with so many people, is it confounds the brain. You know, we've talked about how the brain thinks it knows everything, but in fact, it perceives much, much less than 1% of reality. So the brain's usually, that's red, that's blue, that's a desk, that's a chair. You know, it's a computer. It's judging things. Well, that's great. We need it to get around Earth. Only one small thing, you know, it's missing 99.999% of what's out there. And so that's why we want to quiet our brain periodically, so that we come to our senses. We use the rest of our consciousness to remember how life is set up, including your kids right there. So this music, I think, confounds the brain. The brain's like, wait a minute, we were in a walking park, now we're running from, you know, savages in the jungle, and what the hell is going on here? You know, so the brain says, I don't know what's, you know, this guy keeps yelling stuff and the music and I'm breathing. I'm just going to sit on the shelf and watch this for a while. And that's exactly what you want. Because when you quiet your brain, then you remember, you know, like the saying, be still and know I am God. Let's see what else here. Toning and moaning. So some people will fall into a, instead of, they will tone or moan. They'll be like, oh, you know, they'll say om, or they'll just do this toning and moaning. And I just tap them on the shoulder and say, you're not breathing, you know, go back to the breathing. Now, if you're toning, you know, like, oh, you know, you're doing this and it's happening spontaneously and it's really working for you, great. As long as soon as you realize you're not breathing, go back to the breathing. So you got that. It's pretty simple, but you kind of have to experience it some. We mentioned the lightheaded, dizziness, the cramping. There are also going to be tingling sensations. People say, oh my gosh, I felt tingling shooting down my arms and legs. We think this is due to the increased oxygen, but also being aware of your life force. You know, you're a being of life force. Life force is what you are. And again, when we're shut down, when our circuits are turned off, we're not so aware of that life force. But when we turn them on a little bit more, we feel the energy pulsing through us, the energy of God. We realize we're part of God. Now, it's good to set a positive intention before each session. Let's say, you know, you're aware of something, you want to work on something. Just state that, but then, you know, forget about it. Let it, don't come back to that. And but that's a useful thing to do. And again, I mentioned this in the article and in the introductory. Now, after about 24 minutes of that, then I'll say, okay, now it's time to slow down your breathing. A little more quiet, a little slower. And so then it's kind of like, and after about 5 or 6 minutes of that, then I say, don't even think about breathing. So that becomes like a meditation. You're just laying there, breathing slowly and deeply, no sound. So again, you've got 24 minutes of noisy diaphragmatic breathing. You've got 6 minutes of slowing down like halfway. And then the last 15, quiet, you're out. And that's when all this, you remember how life is set up. All right, frequency. For most people, I recommend using it twice a week. And you can use your tears and your anger as measuring stick. So for me, I used it twice a week for a month or two. And then at some point, I'm like, what the heck? I'm not, you know, crying my heart out, and I'm not, it's, you know, not pounding us on. So that's your sign that you're ready for it. Less often, then drop down to once a week. Maybe do that for a month, every other week. And I use it once a month, like a massage or an acupuncture treatment or a chiropractic adjustment for maintenance. And then finally, recommendations before the technique. I recommend laying down for this one. So most of the time I say sit up because you'll fall asleep if you're meditating, but this is not meditating. So it's better if you can lay down, but for some people, back problems, it's not comfortable for them. So in that case, sit up, feet flat on the floor. If you're, yeah, just as a general rule, and I have to say this, really being the teacher of this, that you should have a trusted family member or friend in the house the first time or two that you use this. Keep in mind, generally I teach this to people in groups, and I'm right there with them to keep an eye on people, because I did have, of the thousands of people I did this with, I had one person who about halfway through started pounding her head on the floor. It was the first anniversary of her daughter's passing. And luckily I was right beside her. She like pounded twice. I got over there, put my hands under her head and got her back on track. That's the only adverse reaction I've seen, but it was enough for all of us to be, cautious. And so have someone with you that's going to make sure you don't, I want to say flip out, because nobody flips out. It's just the pain can be so great. This mom said, I didn't want to live. I want to just pound my head and die. And we all understand that. Wear comfortable clothing that doesn't bind, because you're going to be moving around and stretching and so on. Make sure you have some chapstick on your lips, because your lips can get dry with the have some Kleenex nearby for crying. Drink some water just beforehand and have water nearby. Now, it's okay to, in fact, I mean, you can get up and go to you want to go to the bathroom just before your session, but if you have to go halfway through, then you just get up and go and keep breathing the whole time. Same way if you get too thirsty, then take a swig of water and then get back to the breathing. You want to turn off any potentially interrupting electronic devices, phones, pagers, pacemakers. That last one's a joke. Okay, don't really do it. And it's better not to have pets in the room with you. And some of you get a lot of comfort from your pets, but no, this is a time for you to be in there and do everything we talked about. If there are going to be others in the house, warn them. Okay, there's this really weird doctor, and he told me to do this thing. It's going to sound like antelopes delivering babies in there, but it's really powerful. So, just so they know what's going on. And then the last thing I recommend is be rested. This takes a lot of energy to do, as you might imagine. So make sure you're rested. In other words, you don't want to do it in the evening, do it earlier in the day. Finally, some recommendations after the session. You want to have some quiet time. You don't want to plan on like going to a county fair or something right afterwards. You want to ease back into, quote, the real world. So have some quiet time to internalize your insights, feel the peace. I used to take a little walk in nature afterwards, because it's intense. Be careful if you drive soon afterwards. It's good to share your experiences with loved ones as much as you can. That makes it more real, helps you internalize it. It's good to journalize your insights or benefits that occurred during the technique, right afterwards, and that arise spontaneously while awake or during dreams for, say, a week after. And then you look at your journal and you have all kinds of important insights that can really expedite your healing journey, lessen the depth and the frequency of your grieving. And then the last thing is consider having a group experience with a group of people. If you have 6 or 8 weird friends, open-minded and open-hearted friends, say, hey, I have this really cool thing. And so all of you are, on the floor around and you're doing this, play it loudly, and then afterwards people can compare notes. And sometimes people will have the same insights, the same experiences, which kind of like you're tapping into the collective unconscious. So that's it. Otherwise, there's nothing more than me to tell you. It's fairly complex, right? But when you start doing it, and as always, if you have any questions or problems once you start using it, email me, mark@soulproof.com. And I'm glad to answer those. I'm sure I've heard them before. All right, we have 5 more minutes. Questions, concerns?
If there's no questions, I just want to throw out there's 3 meetings right after this one. One is for children who have passed while in college. One is Jacob Cooper's going to do question and answers in a guided meditation. And the last one is spiritual tools for healing. So you can find all of those under the HPH events if you're interested.
Thank you. Lots going on. Okay. Well, let's let people have a breather then before the next one. And remember, reach out any way we can help. We have a whole wonderful team. We're here for you. And please don't hesitate to ask whatever you need. I'm sure we've
Can
heard
I ask a
before.
question real quick? I couldn't raise my hand. The buttons weren't working. I was rushing, I think. The
Sure.
last group that you were talking about with the tools for healing, I couldn't find that link earlier today. Can you put that in the?
Yeah, let me see if I can get it.
I looked for it, but I couldn't find it. And
And
thank
what-
you, Mark, for your presentation tonight.
You are very welcome. And what were we talking about? Tools for healing?
Yeah, it's by the one she was just talking about. She's talking about some more groups that were happening tonight. And one of them, I had it up here. Her name is Kim Hoodoo. I mean, I shouldn't have said that. Hodis.
So,
Hodis Hoodoo.
so
She would love that, wouldn't she?
did you go under, are you on Facebook?
Yes.
So
I
under
went in
the,
there, but I can't find a link for her.
so if you go under, let's see, under more, let's see.
Sorry, Mark. I didn't mean to start something.
No, it's fine. That's
Sometimes
very
I have a
important.
hard time finding them too, but if you go under more, you can find them. I'll put it here.
Thank you. I found the one for Joseph Cooper.
Yeah.
Oh, and I have a teacher. Well, she just loved you. Do you remember Kelly Worth? She passed, but she absolutely loved you, Mark. She really did.
Who couldn't not love me? I'm so
Right.
lovable.
All right. Hopefully that's it. I hand wrote it, so hopefully I didn't write and do any mistakes there.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that so much.
All right. Well,
All
good
right,
luck.
folks. God bless. See you in a
All
couple
right.
weeks.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Love you.
Thank
I've
Thank
done
you.
Mark's holistic healing
Thank you
or
so much.